the Boole, now the Boole is something that I've seen that some students have started to uh, try out, which is great. The Boole is this great little tool that helps you when you're first starting out modeling. It's a way for you to essentially cut something out of another object. Now, later on down the line, especially when you start thinking about animating, you'll want to model very precisely, and you'll want to control the number of polygons you'll have, and you'll want to make sure that you try and keep quads. But when you're starting out, if you need to put a hole in something, you might not be up to modeling that with the modeling tools yourself yet. So the Boole is a great intermediate, not an intermediate, but it's a great way to get started with that kind of process. So what you'll need is, to use a Boole, you'll need the object that you want to cut or change, whatever it may be, and you'll need the shape that you need to do that. So a great example is always when you're starting out is if you had a cube and you somehow wanted to cut a hole in it. Okay. Now if you want to cut a hole in it, again, later on, if you want it to be one piece, if you want to control how many polygons you have, then you'll want to do that with modeling tools and cut yourself a hole. But when you're starting out again, and we are starting out, we can use a Boole to get that done pretty quickly, and then we could always work our way down the line later to do it with polygonal modeling when we're doing more complex stuff. So if I have this cube and I want to cut a hole in it, I need the cube, and then I need the object to make the hole. So I go back up to my primitives and say I get a cylinder. Okay? And I'm just going to make my cylinder taller. Okay? And what I want to do is I want to make sure that the cylinder breaks through the space of the cube. So I don't want to keep it in the cube like this. I want to make sure that I at least intersect with the cube. And I know I've told you that earlier in the semester, that usually we have to watch out when we're intersecting stuff because of overlapping geometry. But in this case, we are going to want it to overlap because the overlap is where the Boole is going to make the connection. So because we're using a Boole, it's okay that they overlap because our goal is to have the Boole take care of that. Okay, so I have my cube. You can see there's my cube, and there's the cylinder poking out of it. So my goal is going to be that the Boole is going to take that cylinder and it's going to cut that hole out of the cube. Okay, so I should have a hole when I'm done, a hole in the shape of this cylinder. Okay, so how do I do that? I go up to, I have my two objects in my object manager. I'm going to go up to the menu. Subdivision surface is the first one. Click and hold, and I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, and here's the Boole. Okay, they try to show you, again, Cinema is pretty user-friendly with their interface, thankfully. So this icon is trying to show you what a Boole is going to do. So the green is the object you're going to keep. The white is the object that you're basically cutting with. And it's going to remove the white area from the green, and that's what you'll have left over. Okay, so I'm going to get the Boole. Take it out. Okay, there's my Boole. Okay, now it's going to be like when we do splines and we put them inside of extrudes or lathes. You're going to have to make these objects a child of the Boole. Okay, so we basically have to take the cube, put it inside the Boole, take the cylinder, put that inside the Boole. Okay, so if they're not linked that way, then it won't work. Okay, so I have to take the cube and I drop it, drag it, and then I look for the arrow to point down and I let go. Okay, and so now the cube's in there. Nothing has happened yet because a Boole needs two objects. It needs the object that's going to get cut, and it needs the object that's gonna be the cutout. Okay, so I'm gonna take the cylinder and drop that in next. Okay, and then you can see that it seems to have done the opposite of what I wanted, which is okay. It just means that the order is not what I was looking for. So I can put the cube first and the cylinder second, and there we go. Okay, and that's generally what you should be planning for, is the object that is going to get kept is the first one. The object that you're using to do the cutting is the second one. Okay, so the cube in this case is first, the cylinder is second. I've got my Boole, okay, and so now the cutout here is determined by the cylinder. So I can make it bigger, okay, and I can have a bigger hole. I can make it smaller, okay. So the cutout is going to be determined by that cylinder, okay. The same thing is going to go out for the cutout itself. If it's not smooth, you're going to need to adjust the object that you're doing the cutting with. So you can see that my circle here is angular. We got a lot of edges there. So I would have to go to the cylinder and I would have to up the rotation segments. And it would probably be a lot here. I'm going to go to like 64. Okay, and now it's nice and smooth. Okay, and you can see there, nice circular, nice smooth hole that we've got in the cube now. Okay, so that's the order. Very simple to set up, which is great. You know, you're able to get a cutout in an object pretty quickly. The reason that this is not sort of a fix everything problem is because when you're modeling and you need to deal with the polygons that this creates for like the next step being that you're going to make it editable. This creates a lot of polygons. I don't think you can see it here. Let me see if I can turn on my Ngon lines. It usually makes a pretty lots of different polygons up here that you can't really work too well with. So I'm not quite sure why my Ngons are not previewing, but maybe they'll pop on in a little while. So basically what happened up here is I probably have a lot of triangles and whatnot to connect all of this together. So I have my display turned on. We'll see if they pop on. Okay, but when you're animating, a lot of times you'll want to make sure that you've got control over the number of polygons you have. So the Boole might not be the best resource to do modeling on an object that would have to be animating later, like a character. But this will suffice for one if it's static, two if it's a simple object. Okay, so the great thing is now that because this is parametric, you could come into the cube and you could be adjusting the cube. You could give it a fillet. You could do a lot of stuff after the fact. You could change the size, and it's going to adjust on the fly. If you don't like the Boole anymore, you could always just exit out, and it will turn it off. So in that way, it's non-linear. It's not destructive. You don't have to worry about that being an issue. So that's great. You could always take it apart if you need to. You could always switch out the object. So that's the important part about parametric modeling, is that you're always able to go back and you can go to the attributes manager, you can go to the object manager, and you could keep changing those object settings for the cube, for the cylinder, and then also for the Boole. The Boole comes with its own options. So usually what you do want to do is you want to keep it on high quality. You can see here, hide new edges. That's why you guys weren't seeing what I was trying to show you. Hide new edges is what the Boole, by default, this is checked on, which I feel like is new. That's what I mean. That's why the Boole is not always sort of the best solution for what you're trying to do, because you can see that it does make sort of messy geometry. You can see all these triangles, and there's some weird ones in here. The Boole will do whatever it needs to do to make the shape work. It doesn't really care about it. It can't. It cannot make the most optimal geometry. That's where you as a human would be going in there, and you would be planning where you're cutting and making sure every polygon is nice and clean and trying to get quads. But if you're just letting the Boole do it, the Boole's #1 priority is to cut the hole for you. So it will make, crazy geometry if it has to. So that's just something you have to know when you use the Boole, is that it's not going to be making very pretty meshes for you. You're going to see a lot of triangles and whatnot if that's usually what it needs to do to make it work. Okay, so hide new edges is checked off. So if yours doesn't look like mine, it's because I've checked this on and off. So I'm going to check it off again, because right now we don't really have to worry about that level of detail. The other thing we're going to look at is that you can change the type. So it says Boolean type. It's A subtract B. So you have A and you have B. and they're subtracting from each other. So A is subtracting from B, okay? Which is essentially, if I guess the cube is B, then the cylinder is A. But you have other options. You have A union B, okay? It will fuse those together so they will act like one object, okay? You have A subtract B is the default. A intersect B. That one will just keep the intersection of the two objects. So you can see if I highlight it here, it will only keep, if I look at it from the side, wherever the objects were touching, that is what intersect keeps, okay? All of the rest of it that was protruding on its own and wasn't overlapping, that is hidden. That's what's cut out. That's cropped. So the intersect is if you're trying to take two shapes to create the piece in the middle, that would be what you'd want to use for the boole here. A intersect B, it's going to let you keep the connecting part where the two objects overlap. Okay, and then the last one in there is A without B. Okay, this is interesting. You'll have to compare this sometimes to A subtract B. It's similar, but if you notice what the difference is that A subtract B, it cuts it out, but it keeps the interior wall. A without B gets rid of that wall. Okay, so it literally cuts it out and it leaves it hollow. So I don't know how many times you'll reach for this option, but maybe sometimes this is exactly what you need to do, is you don't want the interior space. So if that's the case, then it's A without B. There's nothing left over from the second object. It just cuts the whole thing out, and it leaves no extra bits behind. So you'll just have the whole, and you'll have no remaining parts of the other object. Okay, so very similar to A subtract B, you'll get the same result in the cutout, but the difference is going to be whether you want the interior space left behind or not. Okay, so that's the default, A subtract B. So you have a lot of options for the boole. At a certain point, you could make this editable. Okay, you do have to, think about when you make it editable that it won't be parametric anymore. So that means you will not have the options. You won't be able to change these object settings anymore, the object properties. So you do have to keep that in mind as one, if you make it editable, to continue modeling with it and use polygonal modeling tools on it, you will lose the object settings, both for the primitives and the boole object. You won't have object properties anymore. And then two, you will have to contend with whatever polygons were made when you had the boole create the new object. So you will have to deal with this with modeling tools. If you're trying to bevel something or you're trying to extrude, you will have to deal with this new geometry that the boole creates. So sort of two things to keep in mind if you were going to make it editable. Okay, but if your goal is to just cut something out of your shape and you don't have to worry about next steps, you can just leave it like this, then the boole is a really fast, quick solution to do that. Okay, I'm going to show you guys next how to trick it into putting multiple objects in there, because a lot of times when people see the boole and they see how it works, they'll be like, but what if I want to make multiple cuts? And by default, the boole does not let you do that. It's not going to let you say, oh, okay, you want to put 10 objects in here. I'm not going to let you do that, because like the extrude and the spline and those other ones, it only wants to see, like in the case of an extrude, it would only want to see one spline in there. Same thing here, it only wants to see two objects, the one that's getting cut out and the one that's doing the cutting. So you can use another object to help you out. Okay, but at this point, if anybody has any questions, drop it in the chat or let us know, and I'll address it before I show you that, because we are going to need to use a connect object to help us out.